What's up? How's it going?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
I'm so happy to, honestly, I'm happy to see you because I think from all the people that we were in high school with, you're probably the one. I mean, there's many, right? But uh, you're probably one of those few that it just disappeared after high
Yeah.
school. It's like, whatever happened to Eva? I mean, where is she? What's happening?
Well, you know what? I mean, you had your Socrates crew.
Yeah.
So I never went to Socrates. I went to Berkeley in Park X. So already the few Greeks that were in our high school, I mean, I was always the outcast. Don't get me wrong. I made friends with the other Greeks. I still have those same friends still today. But, you guys had a clique from very young. So it's kind of hard to like get in there.
You think so? I mean,
Yeah, no, you guys were all nice. Don't get me wrong. No, it's just that, you just go with the flow and you guys had your inside jokes and your Socrates, anecdotes.
yeah.
And, when you're in high school, you're always trying to fit in and, do your best, etc.
You know, I think I'm trying to remember now if I ever saw you because there's a lot of kids that we didn't go to college afterwards together. I mean, I didn't follow the rest of the people either. They all went to Vanier or Dawson or wherever they went.
Right.
And I thought, look, if I follow these guys in CJIP, I'll still be there when I'm 40.
It's true.
So,
And I'm sure. And I see you online. You're still friends with
yeah,
the
no,
high
of
school
course. I mean,
crew.
we never really lost touch. It's just that when it came time to go to CJIP, I went my own way, and I was a ghost. I was like really in and out,
Okay. Okay.
which is exactly what I wanted, because everyone else, I mean, I think of Chris, who was in CJIP for I don't know, 4 years, 5 years.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
he just dumped CJIP and went straight to university when he got when he was 21, or 20, whatever the age is. So I think that was a good thing. But from all those people, and I'm trying to think, and Park X, I mean, it's such a small little bubble, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
eventually run into someone at some point. And I think I saw you for the first time after high school in 2018 when I was campaigning, and I think
Yeah.
you were there
Yeah.
with
You're
your family.
right.
And I was like, oh my God, Jesus, how are you? And it's just weird to me, because. Like I said, I mean, we live in such a little bubble. I mean, everyone kind of runs into each other. This is what's good and what sucks at the same time about social media. The fact that you're friends with everyone pretty much that you either grew up with or you went to school with,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of quote unquote keeping up with them, but at the same time, you're not really. You're not really
Yeah.
staying in
Yeah.
touch or whatever. I mean, you're following what's happening and. You're seeing their growth and their success or whatever's happening in their
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and everything is nice and dandy. But then you realize that I haven't really spoken to this person in I don't know 20 years.
You're right.
It's
You're right. You're
crazy.
right.
It's
I
crazy.
feel. I feel though. As you get older, you still make friends, but I think the friends that you make when you're a kid, it's a different type of friendship. There's no. I can't. I just have a few friends, and they're my close friends, and they're when I met when I was 15 and younger.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong; I still have other friends that I've met through adulthood, etc. But there's like a different connection. So I feel even though you and I haven't, stayed in touch, or maybe whatever, I feel that you knew me. I don't know, at our innocence. So if something should happen to your success, I'll be so happy for you because, I don't know, we grew up together.
Yeah. It's not like you met someone yesterday and you kind of don't know them. Like there's a history there, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, look what's happening, And we're going to talk a lot about what you're doing because it's honestly very amazing. But I want to get to high school before because obviously
Mm-hmm.
we met, like you said, we didn't go to the same elementary school. We were like a small little gang that were together since elementary that kind of transitioned together into high school. And obviously in high school we met other people like yourself and,
Mm-hmm.
and other people like Nectar,
Mm-hmm.
for example. We didn't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
we met him in high school, and so you develop new friendships and stuff. And the other day I can't remember who I was with. I think I was with Chris, and we're talking about high school and how that whole period was. We often look back at high school and we're like, was it good? Was it not good? I mean, it's for me at least, it's this huge question mark where, yeah, we had fun and everything, but at the same time, it wasn't like I don't know. I mean, and I don't know how to explain it, but we came out of high school thinking that it was probably going to be different, or and it's just, another 5 years that just passed, and I mean, for me, it's not much more than that. Like, if I had to go back, I wouldn't go back to high school. I would probably go
Never.
back to elementary, for example, where
Mm-hmm,
I don't know,
mm-hmm,
for some reason, I was a lot more attached to that. I don't know. I don't know if it's the same with
mm-hmm,
you, but that's how I
mm-hmm.
felt in Stan. Maybe the fact that we were always, hanging out together with pretty much the same group of people. Maybe that's why. I mean, it didn't really broaden our horizons. I mean, I don't know what it is, but yeah.
I think high school, and I've spoken to, whatever, your colleagues or acquaintances that you didn't necessarily go to high school. You thought high school, this was it, this was life. So
Yeah.
if you were the cool kid, then you'd be the cool kid forever. Or if you were like, I don't know what, the smart one, you'd be, I don't know, you'd become an astrophysicist. And as we got older, and once you find yourself and you go through what you had to go through as a teenager, you realize that cool kid was actually a loser, or vice versa, or the quiet one actually did great things, or etc. So it's like a little bubble that I hope our kids, well, I'll try and emphasize that to my kids when they get to high school, that yes, it's important to have friends and stuff like that, but there's life outside of high school, and that's where CJEB University or whatever happens.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I often think about that too, right? And with my wife now, I mean, my eldest started in elementary, like she's in kindergarten, and I'm trying to think, okay, is she old enough to understand what I will tell her about the fact that kids are dumb? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
they do stupid things, and like, don't worry about the, anything that happens. What people say, like, it's so meaningless,
yeah.
and I mean, look, to some extent, I mean, we weren't bullies, but we did mean things too to kids, and
Well, we're kids too, right?
I know, exactly, and we have the other podcast where with Chris, and we've, I don't know how many times we've apologized, hopefully, to all these kids that may be watching or not. I mean, we were mean to a couple kids, but it was, because we tried to explain bullying on that podcast and on many shows, and I don't think we were necessarily bullies, but we were, I don't know how to say it. I mean, we never hit kids or beat up kids or whatever. It was more kind of teasing and kind of
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. And you realize that we're so stupid. Like, what the hell did we do that? And there's all these stories that we keep reminiscing about kids that we probably hurt their feelings. Some other kids that we ate their lunch. And at that given time, it was, everybody was laughing. Even that kid that we ate, his pizza
Yeah,
or drank
yeah.
his Coke or whatever. Everybody was laughing. So we didn't think, oh,
Am I
yeah,
damaging this
you know what I
person
mean?
forever?
Mind you, we didn't know if the other kid was laughing because he was afraid of, getting beat up or something, which we would never do. But we don't know. And, now as a parent, you think of all these things and you want to tell your kid that, it's so meaningless, that phase. It's so stupid. Don't get caught up in all these things. And I'm in the same boat like you. I mean, I don't know if things have changed or if kids are different, or if, the whole system, like the ecosystem in school has changed, where kids, the cool kids now are, the nerds of back then, you know what
Mm-hmm,
I mean? Or
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the environment friendly kids that are wearing, I don't know, biodegradable pants, or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
But
maybe that's what's cool now, and I don't know.
well, you know what? It's nice that you came to that realization that, let's say, you weren't the nicest to everybody. There are some adults that continue bullying. That's how they were as kids, and they just continue on bullying. There's no self-reflection.
Yeah, yeah.
So the fact that you're thinking about this, I mean, I mean, and you didn't do anything to what I remember. I
No,
mean, I don't remember thinking like, oh my God, George, what a
no, but we never see.
horrible.
We were never troublemakers. We were never, the kids that were always punished or got expelled, or like nothing. None of that happened. It's just that I think, we just had fun, and we
Mm-hmm,
enjoyed
mm-hmm,
ourselves. And even the kids that, we would hang out with, I mean, we were kind of just making fun of each other and teasing each other and
mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't see it as a bad thing. And of course, I mean, maybe I can't remember, but perhaps we may have hurt someone's feelings or whatever. But I mean, I look at bullying now and it's so different, right? Because you're 10, 12, 11, 13 years old and you're already on social media and there's all these things that are happening,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't end at school.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you
you're
go
right.
and, at home, and the next day everyone is talking like that. It didn't exist with us. Like
Which
ours,
was great.
of course it was great. I mean, there was an embarrassing moment, you would fall or slip and fall in a water puddle or whatever.
That was it.
People would make fun of you, and the next day it was like nothing happened. It was okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now it's different, and it's tough to raise your kids, I feel. I mean, I don't know how old your kids are, but I'm at that phase where I'm trying to think, okay, how do I, teach my kids that you're going to go through things in school.
Yeah.
You're going to get hurt, you're going to cry.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't worry about it. I mean,
I know, but it doesn't. My oldest one is 10 and he's in grade 5. And there was like some kind of situation at school that happened between his friends on the playground, and he wasn't too happy about it. And he came home and he was like, why did they do this? And this is like the end of the world for him, And I'm like, just kids, But I mean, they have to go through the motions of it.
Yeah.
And what I did notice, at least in my kids' elementary school, is that they're very like anti-bullying. Like the kids are aware you cannot make fun of, etc. The bad thing is, well, not bad thing. It's great to have for them to be taught that, but then in high school, it's a different ballgame. It's like dog eat dog. So I feel like these kids that have been sheltered in elementary school, which is great because you shouldn't be a mean person to begin with.
Yeah.
They're going to go through high school, and then it's all hell, I feel, is going to break loose. Like, the
good point.
I don't know. That's my opinion. We'll see. Yeah. I'm not there yet.
But it's interesting because what you're saying is that they're going to go through this whole period not kind of developing themselves to encounter these things, right? And to grow from them or to learn from them. So everything is perfect. We're protected.
Yes.
You go to high school and it's like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, exactly.
I just got shoved into my locker or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, do I say anybody? Like, do I go to the teacher or I'm going to get beaten up after? So there are your options.
At some point I want to sit down with my parents. And we don't have that kind of relationship with my parents. It's not like I'm going to sit down and open up with them and how old are you and how did you like we're not but at some point I wish I could just sit down and ask them, how the hell were you guys raising us? Like, I mean, were these things happening in your mind?
I don't think so.
Were you thinking, oh, poor thing, I hope he doesn't get bullied in school? Like, I mean,
I don't think so.
No way.
I mean, again, I've spoken to my parents about it after, and they were like, what do you mean bullying? This is life, like this is what's happening. Like there are no issues. You're kids. We have issues. We need to pay the bills. We need this. We need that. So they weren't conscious of it. And in a way it was good. But now us as parents, where you're like, oh, how do you feel when that person told you you're stupid? And it gets too much. You're putting more emphasis on the wound when the wound isn't even that big.
I don't know, man. We'll see. But just to go back to Stan, I mean, how do you remember those 5 years, or was it? Yeah, it was 5 years.
5 years. Listen, they were fun. They were nice. But if my kids, first of all, I don't live near Outremont, so to send them to high school there is not an option. Just logistically. But I don't think I would send them to that school in particular, just the workload. I don't know. I had no life from 12 years old to 17. And I wasn't meant to have a life. I mean, I'm a kid. But I felt so much stress with the workload and the keeping up with the good grades because, our parents instilled that on us to have good grades. So, we could make something of ourselves and, not have crappy jobs like they did. But it was just a lot of work. And I feel like, was it worth it? I don't know, but I'll never know.
It's the big question, man. Was it worth it? I've had this conversation with my friends so many times where, is the education system here the best, right? I mean,
right.
You see how it's developing in other countries and, they've upgraded their way of teaching where it's not really centered around grades. It's centered around interests. What is the kid better at? And let's focus on that and kind of encourage them to pursue that kind of train. But I agree with you. Stan was just incredibly hard, especially for the students that, like me, weren't the top, I mean, I don't think I was the worst either, but I mean, I was kind of, closer to the worst than to the best.
No, George, I remember you being so well spoken in French. You write beautifully in French.
I
You
don't
still
know.
do. You still
I
do.
don't remember that. Thanks.
I remember you used to get good grades in French, and I was like
I don't
struggling.
I don't know about that. I remember, first of all, going into Sec 1, I could not understand a single thing that was coming out of these
The
teachers.
accents.
They were
Yes.
speaking with a French accent. I
Yeah.
was lost. And I remember, and we
Yeah.
were talking about this with Nectar on the podcast when it was on. And I remember going into Sec 1 and they're like, Bienvenue en sixième. And I was like, what do you mean, sixième? I just came from there, and it was like a whole different reality.
Culture shock.
It was horrible for me. And then I couldn't understand, like the first couple of months, I would get 0 when we were doing the, whatever the dictation or whatever it was. I just could not understand the words that were coming out of their mouth. But no, it was very difficult. And I remember it was way more advanced. After high school, I went to a French CEGEP.
Okay.
And
Which one?
Bois de Boulogne.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the books they were using for French for both years of CEGEP was the literature book that we had in Sec 4 and Sec 5. Like, remember that big, thick blue book there that we had?
Oh,
This
yes.
big, thick blue book with all these excerpts and all that stuff. That's what we were using in CEGEP. And I just came from high school. We were doing that in Sec 4 and 5. And that's when, like, my eyes open. I was like, what the hell was I? Like, is it even normal for a 14-year-old kid to be reading Baudelaire? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
What?
I agree.
Who can understand that stuff? Analyzing
No.
Maupassant or Balzac or
Yeah.
so advanced. And again, like you, I don't know if that served any purpose. I really don't.
I don't know. I asked my mom, I'm like, I've spoken to her about this, and she was like, it's culture. It was good that you learned this. And I'm like, okay, you're in another era of thinking, which is fine. But I mean, even my 10-year-old now, he's reading a book about the Holocaust, about a particular family who's like running away from the Holocaust. And it's important for kids to know about history.
Yeah.
I just feel that he's very sensitive and he's taking this to heart. And I feel bad that at 10 years old, he needs to I'm on the fence.
I'm trying to remember when we started reading, the excerpts from Anne Frank. I think it was in probably high school, maybe. About Anne Frank.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, in any war, I'm not saying that it's the Holocaust in particular. I don't want him learning necessarily that, women are getting raped, children are getting murdered, and, it's all for territory or for whatever, religious beliefs. I just want it to be a kid, Let him learn this when he's 20.
Yeah, Stan. Wow. What happened to you after high school? What? Let's start there.
I don't know what happened.
What did I woke up and I had 2 kids. That's exactly where time went.
After Stan, I think the French just traumatized me that I decided to go to English. So my sister, who's older than me, went to Marinopolis. So I just followed what she did. It didn't matter. At that point, my parents were like, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Dawson, Vanier, whatever? For me, it was English. My sister went to Marinopolis. I just followed and went there. And what was great about Marinopolis was like, wow, I can have a life because the workload that we went through with Stan was nothing compared to CEGEP. It was crazy. Yeah. I was like, I would study as much as I did before and still get good grades, but not put in all those, all that like anxiety or, to make it. And then obviously I had to get a part-time job because my parents, not imposed it, but they're like, you want to pay for stuff,
15, we were working.
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, I had time to have a part-time job and pay my bus pass and whatever, get a pizza if I wanted to. So it was nice. It was nice. And then, I met other groups of kids, other cultures, right? Indians, Jews, Portuguese that were not necessarily present at Stan.
Yeah.
But hey, you get to know different people. Montreal is multi-ethnic. So one way or another, you were going to, mesh with them.
Absolutely.
Early on or later on.
So you followed a career because we're going to talk about what you're doing now because you're obviously a very well-known makeup artist. You're really involved. And this is the great thing about what I love about the podcast, because the idea was to bring to the forefront people that are working behind the scenes in whatever industry, and you're like smack in the middle of Quebec's pop culture, right? And like,
Yeah.
I mean, we see the pictures on magazines and on TV and all these things, and you're one of these people that are contributing to that, but nobody really knows. I mean, you're behind the scene. But and I remember reading an article about you at some point where this wasn't really what you had planned out. I mean, this was a passion of yours, but it's not really what you were thinking. Okay, I'm going to be a makeup artist, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, coming from Greek immigrant parents, education was very important. So, my dad, he had two daughters, and his goal in life was one of his goals was for us to be happy, obviously healthy, but at the same time not be dependent on a man.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way. It's just financial independence equals you don't need to be
It's the best, yeah.
in a bad marriage or relationship and you're stuck. So I guess, going to CJEP and then going to McGill, I went into accounting. I was like, okay, accountants always have jobs. I was good in math or accounting, and let's just, go with the flow. And then as you graduate, then you get a job and you start working in, companies. I was just unhappy. You're just going with the flow. It's like, oh, did you get this interview for this job? Yeah, me too. Then you get the job, and then you're like doing, whatever you're working, and you're always comparing, and you're like, where are you at in life? Where am I at? And it came to a point where I had my midlife crisis at 25, really.
Wow, yeah.
So really now I'm turning 40 in January. It does not bother me one bit. I'm really, I've had my midlife crisis at 25. So there was a change in me because I was unhappy and I couldn't understand why. So it took a few years to really self-reflect and see, why am I unhappy? And then to accept that it's okay to be unhappy, because it didn't make sense. I had a good job. I was making a good salary. I had benefits, all of that enabled me to make investments and, to whatever, live a great life, a life that my parents wanted me to have.
Yeah.
And then to just, be at 29 years old and be like, nah, not for me anymore. It takes a hit. And not only did it take a hit for me psychologically, was that I was confronting people that I went through this whole journey and say, you know what, I just want to do makeup. And then, you get these weird looks like, makeup, what do you mean? You're just gonna, like, how are you gonna live? What are you gonna do? So I always wanted to do makeup, but I didn't know how I can make a living out of it.
Is this one of those things that, like, from a young age, you probably loved it, but you never really brought it up because you knew that your parents
Yes,
wouldn't
yes,
approve it?
exactly. So that's what it was. So I had so much makeup at home, and luckily you didn't see me in the CJEP years, George, because I was very colorful, doing like all kinds of artistic stuff that was probably really ugly, because I just needed, that outlet.
Yeah.
And I had told my mom, I think at 19, I said, well, I'm going to become a makeup artist and, I'm going to move to New York, these big dreams. And she was like, no, bring me home your diploma and then you'll do what you want, right? So even when I announced to my parents at 29 years old, okay, this is over. Like, I'm not continuing this. And I was so stressed to tell them. I didn't want to disappoint them. They spent so much money on my education. And here I am telling them, I didn't have to do all that. I could have, just bought a few, eyeshadows and that's it. And they were like, fine, it's your life. Do what you want. And that was like a total relief. So there was a bit of self-acceptance. And then when I would tell people I'm a makeup artist and, I'd have these judgmental looks, I'd be like, it's okay. You could judge it and it's fine. I would have judged it, but I'm happy now. So that's what's important.
Were you already married? I mean, did you have a family when this thing happened?
Yes. So I was already married. I say 10 years is because when my son was born, that's when I consciously made the decision, no more. So it was kind of like an excuse. It was like, I'm on maternity leave. I'm getting, these government checks because I'm entitled to. And then I'm trying to venture off to do this, whole makeup thing. But kid you not, I mean, it took a lot of years before I was able to, make some money. It's all about networking. It's all about who you know. It's all about getting jobs. So it took roughly around maybe 5 years before anything materialized economically. So it was rough because, again, going back to what my parents would instill is like, be financially independent. And here I am, financially dependent, obviously on my husband. But I mean, that notion, it was hard to swallow.
Because you're also, like you said, I mean, you're going from like this very settled environment where, financially everything is fine. I mean, you can make long-term plans, and
Yeah,
suddenly you're just thinking, okay, I'll become an entrepreneur. And then you have this life there that you have to care for now, right?
right.
How does all that process? I mean, uh, I understand the fact that you're like, okay, I've always wanted to do this. This is the real me, and I've been trapped into this whatever world that my parents have always wanted me to have, or that society at large is kind of
Mm-hmm.
pushing you towards. Right? It's not only your parents, because your parents are also part of this whole society that tells them, look,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go to school, and then from school they're going to get a job, and these are the options. I mean, we come from a culture where you're either an accountant, an engineer, or a doctor. I mean, that's
Yeah,
three options that
yeah.
exist, right? So in their minds, I mean, they want what's best for you. So just like in terms of your mindset, I mean, how do you transition from, that comfort to saying, you know what, I'm throwing everything away here. This is what has to happen now.
I think what happened with me in particular was obviously a very supportive husband who saw that I just wasn't happy. But I think when I was still, before I gave birth and I was still going to work, and even like a year before I even got pregnant, when Monday would hit around, I would get these really big headaches. So not my unhappiness was affecting my health, or I would have a knots in my stomach. It was affecting me physically. So there's one thing to just push aside your feelings and be like, I'm unhappy, but shut up. You know what? Like, I have it good. And there's another thing where you're getting physically sick. So again, I cannot say that I made the decision, you know what, I woke up, no more, let me quit my job. I had a child and it was kind of my scapegoat. It
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'm going to have this baby. And obviously I was there for him during maternity leave, but let me see if I could kind of, find out how to get into this whole new industry. Mind you, before that jump, I was really researching a lot. I was researching it a lot about, to become an entrepreneur, how many years does it take before you actually make a salary? And it's roughly about 5 to 8 years, depending on your industry. How long will it take for me to, get contacts or etc. So I didn't just go blindly in and say, hey, this is it, let me try it out. There was sort of like a plan behind it. And at that point, I had my second son and I was on double maternity leave. So I had like an extra year and I was like, okay, good. So for an extra year, let's say financially, we're okay. And then when that kind of, the maternity leave stopped the checks, I was like, okay, let me just continue. I'm making a bit of progress. And, I didn't have my husband breathing down my throat. No, you have to go to work. He's like, okay, do it. I trust you. I trust your vision. Go for it. And it was really his help. I cannot take credit much for it.
Well, it's obviously a huge part, right? To know that you have that sort of support system around you, to kind of push you. I mean, something very similar happened with my wife too. I mean, when we had our first daughter, she was working in a huge law firm downtown. She was doing, communications and all this media related work. Yeah, huge, huge company, like all the benefits in the world. We used to live downtown, so it was literally just 10-minute walk away from home. And same thing happened. I mean, when we had our daughter, the first one, she kind of went off into that whole mindset as well, where she thought it wasn't like you, where it's like, this is my passion, I need to follow it. For my wife, it was more, I cannot go to work and not be home with my kid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want to be, as long as it takes for her, before she goes off to school, I want to be able to capitalize on those, whatever, 4 or 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when she started slowly taking over her dad's business, and she's done fantastic, right? So, I can relate to what you're saying, because it takes like this one little thing to kind of spark everything, and then suddenly you're on this new course, and of course it's challenging, but Yeah, no, I can feel how you're, I can put myself in your husband's shoes where it's like, even from my end, it was like, of course you're going to do it. And, we were having all these conversations before that. It's like, your dad has a company, you're an only child. I mean, it's established, and that's something that we didn't have growing up. I mean, I don't come from a
Mm-hmm.
business background. My parents were both, working class people, and I always envied other kids whose parents had businesses because
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that, well, obviously, I mean, your dad has a business. Good for you. I mean, you have something that you can take over and build and develop, and we didn't have that, right?
Mm-mm.
And so when I met my wife, I mean, it was the first thing I asked. I'm like, well, why aren't you involved with your dad at all? And her too. It was just, she was in that same kind of mentality where it's like, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a better job because this is just what I'm doing to take care of the family. But I mean, there's so much potential to take it to the next level. I mean, why not focus on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It's been great. And I mean, the stress that we went through was probably bigger than yours because I was working in politics, and it's like at any point in time it could just end. Like that's it. Like, I mean, there's like the job security in politics, like we're in the negatives. Like it doesn't exist. So I mean, that was a little bit stressful, but totally relate to that. And I meet so many people that are lost because of the way that we're brought into this, whole, I don't know, professional world, through
Mm-hmm.
school. I had the privilege over the last years to meet with a lot of, education professionals that are kind of trying to change things up. There's all these alternative schools now that are coming up where, like I said before, kids aren't really, they're not focusing so much on the grading system, but they're like, okay, what are you strong now? What are your passions? And they're kind of, they try to educate the kid according to that kind of path. And we'll see how that turns out in the next, 15, 20 years, let's say. But uh,
I think also what helps is that we were born here and we are aware of different jobs out there. So I mean, if your daughters come to you and be like, I'm good at this, what can I do maybe as a prospective career? You can guide them more. Whereas I'll speak for my parents, it was like, no, you need to work in an office. They didn't know what an office job did. They didn't know that there was like bullying there too, or like psychological warfare from certain people. Them it was like, no, an office job is a good job. That's what you need. Whereas now, if my kid wants to pick up garbage, that's his like passion. I mean, obviously, I'll be like, hey, maybe, I don't know, I'll develop something else with garbage as opposed to picking it up. You'll be able to guide them a bit better, at least in my case, I think.
are you the type of parent that is going to be much more open minded, or are you?
Mm-hmm.
This is a question that always comes up with with the people that I talk to. We realize certain things because of the way that we were brought up, right? And we know that, okay, none of that shit worked. We could have done so many other different things, and maybe CEGEP wasn't necessary or university wasn't necessary. But now, as a parent, I mean, how do you think of it? Would you want your kid to have that diploma? I mean, do you see the value in it as much as your parents did, or are you
Oh
really
yeah.
minded to the point where it's like, listen, don't worry about it. If you don't like school, it's fine. Are you that kind of open minded? Are you like the other extreme?
I don't think I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, obviously, I don't want them to, finish high school and be like, I'm going to start off, I don't know what, open up my business. I mean, yeah, maybe it will work for them, but what if it doesn't? They kind of need like a plan B, right? And even with me, with my accounting, I mean, it's been 10 years since I've done any accounting, really. Let's say this whole makeup thing just evaporates. There is kind of like a plan B. I think I'll try and teach them to my best of ability to, go after what you're passionate about, but like make a career out of it. It's not for fun. Unfortunately, life is not fun. You're going to have to provide for yourself at the very least, but have maybe a plan B. And if that means getting a diploma afterwards before, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
It's tough. Let's get into the industry because, like I said, I mean, you're really like smack in the middle of the Quebec pop culture. How do you get there? I mean, was this part of your plan? I mean, how did you imagine it? I mean, did you think I'm just going to do weddings, or I'm going to go work at a hair salon and just do makeup, or was this really the end goal? Like, I want to be in this scene.
Um, I think everything happened just organically. When I was in accounting, I was working, let's say, 70 hours a week. On the weekends, I had taken up a job. This is me being naive. So this is around when Facebook started, social media, Instagram did not exist. So I didn't know how to go about it. So I would pick up all these Quebec magazines and look up who are the teams. I would see what kind of work they would do. And then over the weekends, already I was working a hefty 5-day shift. I started working at MAC Cosmetics, which is a makeup counter in Fairview. So I would go work there part-time thinking, oh my God, they're going to grab these TV people, they're going to come to this counter and like hire us. So there were mistakes along the way. Do not get me wrong. There were mistakes. There was a lot of cold calls, a lot of rejection, a lot of, emailing people, never getting responses back. And then finally, the way it actually started to happen is people were getting, somebody called in sick. And then, somebody would text me like, hey, you had contacted me months ago. Are you available? And I drop everything. I'd literally drop my kid. I have a great mother-in-law. She doesn't live too far from me. And I'd call her. I'm like, can you take care of him? I need to leave now. And no questions asked. She's like, yeah, bring him over. I would dump him. And then that's how it starts. So a lot of that actually. And trying to make contacts, working with people who are at the same level as you, trying to create projects, trying to, show the work on social media and little by little. But again, it was a long road. It was 5 years of that, more or less. And there's still hustle, George. I mean, even now, it's not like I just sit back and people, the phone is ringing off the hook. It doesn't work like that. There is a lot of still hustle. It's just now I know how to play the game a bit better.
Well, I mean, you've also made all the contacts in that scene, right? Who's making what commercial or who's working on what project, who's involved in magazines, photography, all that stuff. And I think you're pretty well connected there. So,
but there's still politics in this. It's like in any other industry, there's politics. So, I mean, there are certain projects right now that I will not get just because I'm not a part of a certain clique, or I didn't put enough work in my career yet to achieve that. So it's all these little stepping stones, milestones, getting your name out.
Is there like this certification you need to get? I know that for actors and for anyone that works kind of in this industry, there's this, I don't remember what it's called. It's like this
UDA or ACTRA.
Yeah.
So it's a union behind it. For you to work in television or in cinema, you need to be a part of the union.
But
and it's called
everyone in the industry, like including the makeup artists as well?
Yes, everybody. So ACTIS, it's AQTIS. It's a union for all the technicians. So everybody behind the camera is a technician. And then after in the technician, you have different departments. You have your makeup, you have your cameraman, you have the preneur de son. Sorry, I don't even know it in English.
Sound guys,
sound guys. Thank you. So for you to do TV, you kind of need to get into that union. But even getting into that union, it's a lot of work. You have to build up credits. You have to prove that you did this and that. So that too, I got it a few years ago. It was like I was crying when I got it because I was like, oh my God, all this effort to just, be able to do a bit of TV, it takes a lot. And I feel that people who start off in makeup, I'll just talk about makeup, they get discouraged or they can't not have a salary for 5 years. It's not, it doesn't make sense. So they let it go, unfortunately, and they move on to something else.
Yeah, that is sad. I mean, are you where you want it to be? Like, is this like the comfort zone right now? Like, this is where you want to be, or is there like any other aspirations? Like, big, like you mentioned New York, for example.
Okay, so New York is not going to happen. I've come to that realization years ago, and the reason behind it is because it's a different market. Okay, I'm not Jennifer Lopez's makeup artist, so it's not going to go there. If I wanted to make it in New York, I have to move there and start at the bottom again, which at my age and, with my family, it just doesn't make sense. For me, my ultimate goal before going into this was to make a good living, to be able to live off of this and, just to make enough money, just to be happy in what I do. And I feel like I have gotten there. As a Capricorn, though, nothing is ever good enough. So, there are more aspirations. I do want to do I have a certain vision of how I want my career to go, what kind of projects I want to do. That's a work in progress. Will I get there? I don't know. But for now, I'm really happy that I can do what I love. And don't get me wrong, George, there are bad days. But the difference between the bad days now that I'm in this industry versus the bad days that I had when I was in accounting is I deal with them better. I don't bring them home.
Night and day, obviously. Because you're doing what you want to do and you're doing what you like. So the hard days are much more acceptable. It's like
yes,
part of the job. At least you're enjoying what you're doing, and you take it for all the good things and you take it for all the bad things as well. Whereas when you're working for someone else and you're in a cubicle and you're like, yeah.
It's true, and at least the line of work that I do is 1-day jobs, more or less, maybe 2. So if I'm shooting a commercial, if I'm doing a photo shoot, so I still meet people I don't necessarily like to work with, but it's 1 day. I know, like at 5-6 o'clock, it's over. I don't have to see you for maybe a few months, a year,
How does it work? Like when you're working with, producers or photographers or whatever, is there like this relationship where, let's say, for example, the photographer that has a shoot is going to be like, look, she's my makeup artist, whatever I do, this is the person I call? Or
Yes.
Okay.
And that's how it works usually. So if there's a photo shoot for pictures, the photographer is usually the one who gets hired, and then he'll hire his team. So that'll be like photographer assistants, the makeup artist that he or she likes to work with, stylist. And obviously, if the project is really big, then there's more people. There'll be one person for hair, one person for makeup. There are instances where I have a relationship with the client, let's say with sport experts, and they really like working with me. And no matter who they hire as a photographer, they impose, let's say, me to the team. But at the end of the day, you have to learn how to work together. And more chances than not, I already know the photographer anyway. So it's not so much as a big deal. In television, though, it's the producer who hires the whole team. And, you have to get along. And sometimes there's even fights on sets between, people behind, but that's another story. That's like unprofessionalism at its best.
Love it. You see, that's what I would enjoy. Because I'm stupid like that. It's like, okay, the makeup artists are fine.
Yeah, no, I swear to God, there's been an instance I heard, not with me, where 2 makeup artists were on set and, some of them want a lot of space, and they were fighting over how they were going to split the table. Okay.
It sounds so stupid, but it's like, it happens. It's like, it's there. Look, obviously, it's a very competitive industry, right? Like you said, and now especially, see, when you started, social media didn't exist.
It did, but I should have gone on that bandwagon before.
No, but you grew along with the creation of social media. See, like Instagram didn't exist. Facebook was there, but it was still at an early stage. Now kids could do whatever they want, There's TikTok, there's all these platforms, and it's so, well, I don't want to say easy, but there's so many more tools for you to get kind of distinguished, right? And especially in your industry where everyone is on these tools and on these platforms, it's obviously very competitive. How do you keep an edge over all these, quote unquote newcomers? Like, how do you always make sure that you're always standing out?
There's always going to be newcomers in any industry that there is. I think the most important is keeping strong relationships. Okay, so obviously you need to keep abreast over what's happening. Basically, always getting better in your craft, in your skill, in your art, and promoting that. But it's a lot of, you know what, keeping in touch with people who've hired you in the past, keeping a good relationship going, because a lot of times people, especially now with COVID, they want to work with people they know. They don't want to try out that new person who has 20,000 followers, because sometimes on-set etiquette is just as important as the job itself, you know, by being quiet or being professional or just not like talking about your personal life is just as important as, you know, doing the job.
It's funny because and again, we come back to the way that we were brought up, right? Because I've met people who, from a young age, their parents were smart enough to put them in a context where the friends they would make at 13, 14, 15 years old were inevitably going to be like the next businessman or next
Right.
businesswoman, just because of, you know, their environment and because of the families and, you know, the business. We didn't have that, right? I mean,
Mm-mm.
our parents didn't understand the importance of networking and meeting people and how important creating and maintaining relationships is, right? And it's weird that, well, it's not weird. I mean, it's good that it happens, but for many people, it happens much later in life. Like, you know, you were nearly 30 years old, and you're like, okay, I need to start networking. How do I do?
Yeah.
Like, it's like this whole new kind of education that you got to put yourself through, right? And you're alone now. I mean, there's no school, there's no program that is going to teach you how to,
Teach you that.
you know?
You're totally right. And I have a cousin, actually. He's getting into the world of photography, and he's going to graduate soon. And he kind of asked for, not help. I mean, I'm not a mentor in any way, but he said, you know, how do I go about it? And I just explained to him just a bit, like just network, and gave him a few tips on how to do it and from my perspective. And he wrote back, he's like, oh my God, the school never has mentioned this to us. Like, this is the way to go, or what not. Sometimes it kind of helps for somebody to tell you the obvious,
Yeah.
because you get so discouraged by the magnitude of, oh, where am I going to start? Where, you know, little steps. And ultimately, I think today's generation, it's all about fast, like going up fast, and it doesn't work like that. It takes hard work and dedication, and you either have it or you don't. You have to stay motivated. And as artists, and when I mean artists, I mean it at large, people that are behind the camera, who are entrepreneurs and who live the highs of, you know, great projects and the lows of, you know, not getting called a lot. You constantly have to find that inner motivation to continue, or else it doesn't make sense to do this type of work.
Right. Tell me a little bit, because you know, obviously, you know, this whole industry that you're in is much more, you know, woman dominated. I mean, of course, there's probably male makeup artists. I don't know. I mean, but I would assume that there's much more women doing this role. Comparing that to, for example, the atmosphere, the environment that you were in accounting, where of course there's women, there's men. I mean, but just in terms of the competition and how fierce it is compared to now. Is that a is there a difference there? I mean, do you feel much more at ease knowing that, okay, yes, there are women makeup artists, but at least I'm in a smaller pond where I can distinguish myself much better than in the accounting or in the business industry where you were before?
I do think, though, listen, there are more women makeup artists than men. There are a lot of men, don't get me wrong, but it's mostly women. That's how it just is. Oddly enough, it is competitive, but it's also a nice community. So oftentimes when a makeup artist cannot do a job because he or she has another job, we are constantly referring each other.
Wow.
So there is that camaraderie amongst us to give, you know, the jobs, but at the same time there's a trust system. So basically, if I can do a job and I refer my friend, well, that friend
Yeah,
better not
you better.
steal. You know what I mean? There's like a little code of, listen, you replace me now, and, you know, but next time I'm going to take it back. You know, it's the way the game works. You know, you do a favor, you're appreciative, but that's it. You're not going to start going and stealing these other, you know,
Yeah.
other jobs, or like becoming best friends with this team. With accounting, though, I don't know, my heart wasn't in it. So obviously there was more men where I used to work, and they were very driven. I just didn't understand why they were so driven. Just because I don't know, it wasn't for me, right?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, look, I think it's important to be driven in anything that you do and to do it with passion. But it's funny how you're in this environment. You're like you don't want to be there, and then you're seeing people kind of give value to something that you don't, and you're like, dude, it's just fucking numbers, man. You're bound.
It's true. It's true. And oddly enough, like I would in my jobs, I would give my 100%, not 110. I would do a good job, but then in my like the evaluations you get from your managers, you'd be like, "Where's your motivation?" And I thought I was hiding it very well, but I guess they had really great perception. I don't know. I was just doing the minimum just to get by, to get, let's say, that 2.5% raise and, just move on with life. But I guess they did see it in a way. And you're right. Other people were really passionate about like numbers and how the business was going, which now I realize is great for them, but the fit was not for me.
What's next now? So you've been doing this for what, 10 years? Over 10
10
years?
years.
What
10
what's
years.
what's in the plans? I mean, what are you working on?
Listen, I don't know what the plan is because, in all honesty, the industry is filled of young people. So sometimes I'm in projects where I'm the oldest person there. Okay, so I question, where are the old people, the old makeup artists? They're around. From what I understand, they're doing more cinema, which is really not what I want to do. I'm not interested, but I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I'll have a change of heart. For me, I'd like to retire as a makeup artist. I hope I will get to that point. It's a very tough job because it's very physical too. I'm like carrying all my stuff. Sometimes there's no elevator. I'm going up flights of stairs, unpacking. Now with COVID, I'm constantly disinfecting. It takes a toll physically also. Because I lived a life where I wasn't happy in my job, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to accounting or anything other than doing makeup. But time will tell. And if I may say something, my first core class in McGill, it was statistics because I went into management, and the old teacher had told us, which I still remember. He said the average person in life changes careers 3 times.
Right.
And at the time I was 19, 20, whatever I was. And I felt like, what is he talking about? Like, you finish in something, you do it until you die.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when I changed careers at 29, I was like, wow, this is career number 2. And as I'm getting to meet a lot of people in my industry, people I do makeup, they come from different walks of life. And a lot of people have changed at least 2 times their careers, some even 4. So I'm hoping it'll stop at number 2, but I'll be open to a 3rd career, maybe. Who knows?
I took up enough of your time, Eva. Honestly, first of all, it was nice catching up with you. I mean, at some point, I don't know if there's ever going to be a reunion or
Wasn't there a reunion planned at some point, or no?
there was something that happened at I can't remember what bar it was downtown.
Santos.
That's right. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
went there, but we saw a couple people. It wasn't a real reunion. Guys, come and party kind of thing. I was like, all right. And thankfully, we had Facebook, or else I don't think we would have gotten invited. To be honest with you, but yeah, I don't know, man. As we grow older, you kind of look back and you remember all these people, and you wonder, where are they? What are they doing? I don't know if it's normal. I'm guessing it's normal, but uh, it'd be nice to kind of see all these old friends and catch up. And I'm really glad. I mean, like I said, I've been following you ever since social media came along, because before that, we had lost touch. But I'm glad that you're doing something that you're passionate about. It shows. And honestly, genuinely, I'm very happy for you.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much for inviting me. I don't usually talk about myself, so this kind of feels weird. But thanks. Therapeutic too.
There you go. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you. Hopefully, we'll get to see you. I don't know, whenever this whole crazy is over.
Thanks.
At some point, we'll probably
And
run into each other.
I appreciate your time, George.
Thanks, Eva.
Bye.